Berryman's is my cleaner of choice going into the ultrasonic cleaner today. I rather like it. What I found is that if you leave parts set out, there's a sort of an oil film that builds up that I don't especially like. I ended up finding Fast 505 50/50 with water, and the ultrasonic cleaner did a damn good job too. So I think that's what I'll be switching to in the future. Plus, Berryman's is very expensive. Now, if I'm gonna do a carburetor, Berryman's. Anyway, these heads have been stripped down. All these parts are gonna go in it. You're about to hear the second most annoying sound in the world. Let's turn this on. The ultrasonic cleaner did something to the mic on the GoPro that I didn't even know was possible. I mean, that ultrasonic, I guess it makes sense because it's ultrasonic and it's vibrating real fast. But what it did to the mic, it just absolutely destroyed any audio that was in this. Now, this video has been was 2 days of cleaning that I've managed to condense down into 27 minutes or 24 minutes. I forget how long it is. So I called a few machine shops locally, create some dialogue with them about cleaning up these heads. The guys I've been going to, honestly, he's kind of a dick, but he does good work, and so I was just kind of shopping it around. And one of the places that everybody kept recommending to me was I'm not even gonna say any names, but I called him up and said, "Hey, I'm working on a Subaru. Engine blew up. Uh, I got to get the heads worked on. I'd like them redone." "Oh yeah, sure, we do that all the time." I said, "Okay, cool. So, how do you guys go about, cleaning everything?" He said, "Oh, well, we just throw it in the hot tank." And I said, "Well, what about the cams?" And he goes, "Well, what do you mean, what about the cams?" I said, how do you go about getting all the debris out of the inside of the cams? They're hollow." And he said, "They are," as I reached over to go hang up the phone because you should know if you're gonna do the job and tell people you're gonna do a good job, you should know what you're dealing with. And so, anyways, I'm flushing these out with brake clean. I use these. You'll see me use these things a lot. These puppy pads. I get them from Costco. I go through a lot of them. We dumped almost an entire thing of brake clean onto that puppy pad, and here after a while, you'll see me lift it up, and there's virtually nothing underneath. Sometimes there's little holes in the puppy pads. Here we go. Yeah, see how minimal that was? I mean, sometimes there's holes in those puppy pads and stuff leaks through, but versus not having a puppy pad, it's amazing. So here I'm looking at these sealing washers. I didn't know that they were a thing, so I had to add them to my list of things to order from Subaru when I made that order, which you guys have already seen that video. These heads had been redone 50,000 miles ago, and whatever sealant they used wasn't extremely hard like I've seen in times past, so it came off pretty easy. D. It's about to get the D. D stands for diesel, and I like diesel as a cleaning solvent. Works great. It does leave a little bit of an oily film on whatever you're working on. Sometimes that's a good thing, especially if you're dealing with raw steel, things you don't want to rust. It's nice to have a little bit of a coating on it. But diesel's great. It's not nearly as volatile as gasoline, and works really well. Plus, it's inexpensive as far as cleaners go. And fortunately, where we live, the city handles a bunch of hazardous waste recycling, so it's really easy to go in there and say, here's some used diesel, here's a bunch of motor oil, brake fluid, coolant, paint, batteries. I mean, they take TVs, microwaves, all kinds of stuff. So that's a brass wire brush that I'm using there. Being careful with the what are they, races where the cams are? You don't want to hit those real hard. I find razor blades really useful when doing some of this detail stuff. It's kind of nice to, be able to get that sharp edge down into something and, or work that corner. I use a lot of razor blades. And paper towels. So if my wife saw what was coming up next, she'd be pissed. She's always like, hey, where are all the Q-tips going? I don't know, honey. I just have really clean ears. These parts have got to be clean when you put it back together. You don't want, any metal debris from the bearings that gave out in the old block. A bunch of oil passages too to clean out. It's far cry from where it was. So I'm running that ultrasonic cleaner, I think, at like 100 and 130, 140 degrees. I don't really recommend doing that with Berryman's, because it's like, it just seems hot, for something flammable like that. But I do it anyways, because it works really well. But like I said, I'm going to end up switching out Berryman's for Fast 505. Actually, I don't know if I mentioned that. I'm going to end up switching, if I didn't, I'm going to end up switching out Berryman's for Fast 505. I'll retain Berryman's for doing carburetors, which I do a lot of, rototillers, pressure washers, edgers, lawnmowers, etc. Works great on that kind of stuff. Chainsaws. But for this, I didn't think it was a great solution. Like I said, it leaves a film on stuff that, just not ideal. Now, one downfall to having done this is those roller bearings right there that I'm playing with. Those are splash lubricated. And, well, chucking them in the ultrasonic cleaner and along with Berryman's, there's just no lubricant left in them. So it's kind of a pain. I had to end up going through and re-oiling them all, which arguably wasn't a bad thing to have to do. It was just a lot of extra effort that I don't know that I necessarily needed to go through. I'm searching in my bag of tricks. I just got a phone call from the machine shop saying, hey, we're going to end up redoing your heads. We want valve stem seals. You said you had some? And I was like, yeah, look, I got a bunch of them. So I took those down there. Dropped them off. Those guys, they always argue with me about doing Subaru heads. They're like, just machine them. Just machine them. They're fine. And I go round and round with them. Hey, I'd like to just do them up, you know? Let's put new valve stem seals in them. Let's give it a valve job. It doesn't need it. Doesn't need it. So on this one, I was like, look, it's getting a short block. New short block. Let's do them. Let's do the heads entirely. No, it doesn't need them. Well, can you look for me? Can you just look? And then he called and it was like, I'm looking at these valve stem seals and they're a little worse for wear, so let's do it. And I was like, thank God. I didn't want to have to argue with you anymore. That's the machine shop that does all the heads for our local Subaru dealership, so he's pretty, well, he does a lot of heads for Subaru, so. So I like to do the painful ones first, and these ones are a bit more complicated because you got to take that block out. And here pretty soon you're about to see the spring that I was trying to tell you about here. Now there's a flat side to that spring that's hard to see, and then it's rounded on the other side. So when you take it off, you got to pay special attention. That flat side rests against the rocker, which I'm glad I paid attention. That's a high E on a guitar string. And so there's these oil passages that go through those rockers. And I'm just using that high E to, shove down in there and ream them out. I find old guitar strings extremely useful, especially down there on the bell end. Now, I did spend 2 days doing cleaning on the all of the extra engine bits. Obviously, I didn't film it all, but there are, let's see, there's 2 passages on those rockers, oil passages. And what was funny about it is that if you get the, you can see me, oiling up those, it was a pain to get oil down in there and make sure that those bearings were well lubricated. Anyways, if you get brake clean in the right spot, you could spray completely through the orifice all the way through the rocker and out the other side. It's kind of funny. Had great fun playing with it. See, that Berryman's got in those bearings, and not only did it pull out all of the lubricant that was in it, it also got in there and kind of dried out because it was really difficult to get out. And there's a dog. Anyway, those bearings were really the Berryman's was really difficult to get out. So brake clean, cut it. More diesel. Brake clean, cuts it, and then hit it with some 30 weight. Now, these heads were really clean anyways, and I didn't clean them before you're seeing them. That's how clean they were, which I thought was surprising. I think the engine was pretty well taken care of, sans the whole running it out of oil bit. But we're cleaning them up anyways. Plus there's metal debris in them, so. have a look at that, and you could see where it wasn't in the ultrasonic cleaner and just how clean it came. You'll see better later. There's another example, but that ultrasonic cleaner is incredible. I mean, it's incredibly loud, but it does a good job. And the more meticulous you can be, the more it'll pay off in the end. It sucks to do. It's a lot of work. But it pays. Dividends, even. Remember how that looked? So this is the baffle or the windage tray. I mean, the diesel wasn't touching it. Now, it took me forever to realize that that was a smiley face that I was seeing on that oil pan. And the reason why it's a smiley face is whoever was doing the oil changes on it stripped that oil pan drain plug out. And so I guess to make light of the situation, they decided to put a smiley face on there. I ended up running the tap through it and fixing those threads, recutting them, chasing them, whatever. Now, I have used a wire brush and, pulled off all that ultra gray before, but this is a far superior method in my opinion. Cut it out. Cut as much of it as you can out with a razor blade and then go over it with a wire brush. And it's like, phew, you're done. Right there, I was just thinking, what the hell? Let's throw it in there and see what happens. So here's your good look at it, even though my framing was pretty far off. Crank it back up for another 20 minutes. Now this oil pan was definitely a pain in the ass, and if I was smarter about it, it may have made more sense to replace it because I spent an awful long time getting metal fragments and debris out from inside all of the little tiny crevices that were in there. I ended up taking it out with the garden hose and hosing it out bringing it back in, using the air compressor, finding more bits, taking it back out, over and over and over. I probably did it 10, 12 times before I was like, okay, I'm not getting anything else out of it. It may have made more sense just to get another one, especially considering that those guys stripped it out. Well, not stripped it out because it was still salvageable. It just, you know, a lot of times you can put those drain plugs in by hand until they bottom out. Then you can, you know, hit them with a wrench, torque them up. But this one you get about halfway down and it was like, nope, not going any further without a little force. So I mean, there's metal bits and, you know, little chunks of cut ultra gray all over it. Inside it, it's everywhere. Watch this. Isn't that amazing? You can see there's a spot left there. I had an air pocket in there when I just threw it in there. I didn't expect it to do that. All right, other side. This time make sure to wiggle it around and get all the air pockets out of it. So cut some time out there. I went off and do some other stuff that was not an appropriate use of my time. That thing just come out remarkably clean. I mean, I could not have, you know, scrubbied it with diesel and wire brushes and nylon brushes and gotten that same result. It just wasn't possible. Now, I did end up taking the cams and putting them in there the next day. I don't know if it's in this video or if I even recorded it. But after I switched all that Berryman's out to 505 and did some other things and decided, you know, what happens if we throw the cams in there? Because, you know, I wasn't really that confident in what I had done with the brake clean. So it got more brake clean. It got ultrasonic. It got the air compressor. And after all of that, I was confident they were clean. Debris free. That was the thing I needed to add to the that hose right there, that 90-degree bend, that needed to be added to the Subaru list. I had already made the list at this point, or excuse me, I had already made the order, so I had to call them and order that. I also forgot to include a automatic transmission filter. And you're going to see just how much debris come out of all of that. Granted, it's sped up, but now some of this is ultra gray. But you could definitely see the metal that's in there if I could frame the camera. This whole point of view head strap thing, it didn't really work out for me. It's great in theory, but in practice it's pretty terrible unless you're pretty adept at figuring out, you know, camera angles and shooting from the hip on it, which I'm not. So now at some point I threw the PCV valve in the ultrasonic cleaner, and so you're about to hear how it came out. The other thing was pretty well stuffed, so. Thanks for watching and hanging out. Coming up, we'll be cleaning up the interior, putting it back in, reassembling the engine, and then onward from there. So Stay tuned.